Welcome to the SLUSH podcast, the only place on the internet where we cover toddler toys to movie reviews and all of the spoilers in between.
Welcome back, Dino people. We've got myself, Cody. We've got Matt, and we've got Cora as like our kind of I don't know how this works, like the first guest of the Jurassic Park series.
Yeah, she keeps showing up randomly.
I figure this time I would just show up at the beginning.
No,
Throw
it's
a
good.
curveball in.
It's interesting because Cora came into the book midway through proximity from just like Matt listening to it. And
Yeah.
it captured your interest and you want to join. So, it's for everybody.
You came in the most vicious death.
I know. I feel like I listened to the most interesting, like,
He had a pretty graphic
racing
death.
part. Yeah, it was like definitely a climax in the book.
I was like moving boxes around. It was echoing out of like our storage room. It was like, Nedry realized he's holding his own guts.
Yeah.
He's just waiting for it all to be over. It was like really bleak.
Then you'd come out and you'd be like, keeping this or checking?
Yeah, like we throwing this out, and meanwhile Nedry's getting killed in the background.
Yeah. But no, it was really interesting, and so that's why I decided to listen to everything. Well, start listening to things after that. I never listened to the beginning, so I might have a skewed perspective of what we're about to talk about.
Could be
It's interesting. It's almost like it's like people would just watch the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was comparing it a lot to the movie. And one thing that I had noticed that was interesting, which I don't think I've ever really heard in a book before, is how they went from one situation to to like a different situation. For example, they talked about the two people driving in the Jeep and passing the dinosaurs and
You mean the vet and Ellie?
Yeah. And then the dinosaurs were behaving oddly, and they're like, "Well, I wonder why they're doing that." And then it would jump over to Hammond and the scientist guy, Wong.
Yeah. So far, so good.
Wong.
Anyway, it's close enough, right?
Can we cut that out?
No, we gotta keep it good.
Anyways, so it
But do you feel like that it cuts together like a movie or like a TV show?
Yeah, it was very much like a movie the way that it was cut around. So I was shocked by that because I thought that we would follow like him and what's the little Lex and them and their whole story, because I mean seem like the main kind of arc is them in the movie, them and the Alan.
Oh my god.
Sorry, I'm just struggling here.
No, this is incredible.
Yeah, that is incredible. That's one word.
I'm really bad at names. Like, I'm so bad at names.
There's a scientist guy. There's a dinosaur.
Okay, I'm a visual learner, and I listened to this, and so those two things don't mesh. So I'm just piecing it together. Anyways, it jumped around, and I really thought that was interesting, but also at times hard to follow.
Well, I guess if you're just jumping into the center of the story.
Yeah.
Because it works up to that pace. Because at the beginning, it's like you're with this person discovering this dinosaur, and then you're with them in a lab talking about, is it a dinosaur? You don't know what I'm talking about right now. But then eventually it's like back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Because you go between the control room in Jurassic Park and then outside, like in the park. So you have a big contrast of what's happening.
Yeah.
Ish.
Whenever I listen to anything in the control room, all I could picture is Samuel L. Jackson with a cigarette.
That's all I picture too. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I like. It's interesting too to hear your perspective and like having trouble to identify with the characters. I'd be curious to like we do our next batch of this and on the next podcast to be like hear how you describe those, because early in the book there's a huge setup to be like Alan Grant is the paleontologist to talk to. Like that's why Hammond reached out to him. But there's like the thing happening in the book now that we're gonna dive into, where it's just like establishing Alan Grant's prowess as like a wilderness man. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're constantly talking about like I think Ellie like I can't remember if it's in this section or not, but Ellie talks about like him. That's when he broke his leg and like spent 3 days crawling out of the desert, and you
Yeah.
know he just got slashed by a T-Rex. So what's he gotta do? He's gotta put some mud on it, like
Yeah,
mud and
that's
leaves.
fucked up.
And they do the same thing with Muldoon too. Like Muldoon's talking about all this stuff in Africa, and like there's a like talking about telling Gennaro about coming up on like other animal attack scenes. He's like, we're probably not gonna find anything.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that part with the kids the most because out of the X amount of times I've listened to this portion of the book, which is an crazy amount again, I found this stuff, and I think it's because we have a kid now, was the most disturbing to me, next to the Ed Regis death. For some reason, when we get to that part, that was one of the most, for me, like scariest parts of the book, and I think it's just because of the way that Michael Crichton describes it, because it's very soft and it's quiet. Did you get to that part?
Where the juvenile T-Rex?
Yeah.
I didn't get to the part where he died. I just got to the part where it kept like pushing him to the ground, and that's when I stopped.
It's pretty much like there, but yeah, the kids just get battered to shit. That's what I like about this part of it, this portion that we're doing. That's why I thought it would be cool to start at this part, because it's basically Tim waking up in the Land Cruiser in the tree, right?
Yeah, I think the chapter's actually called Tim.
Ah, there we go.
Do you know what's funny? When I was listening to this part, I was thinking about Alan. I was like, Alan in the Jeep?
I mean, it's called Tim.
I know, but I forgot that Alan's name was Alan. And I thought Tim was Alan.
You hearing this? I'm scared right now.
Like it's just like Home Improvement, you know?
I just picture Cora reading it like this.
Well, in the movie, aren't they both in the Jeep or something?
No, it's still Tim, but Alan. You see, the difference is Alan goes and finds Tim in the Jeep, but this in the book, Tim's way more independent because he's like the older brother, and he like kind of gets his shit together, and you find out a little bit later that he has the fear of heights, so he actually has a big level up for experience points here, and because he gets out of the tree himself, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he fell out of the tree.
Yeah, well, I mean, because he looks around, he takes his watch off and stuff because it doesn't work. They made a point to say that.
Why would he take it off?
It's because it's like a it's like a thing later for Muldoon to find, to be like, he took his watch off, like he must be alive because it
wasn't torn off.
Yeah, like, he makes a point to say you'd have to rip somebody's wrist, like their hand off, basically, to get it off. And I don't know. I thought that was the neat thing about Tim in the book. He's way more independent, and in the movie, he's the younger one of the two of them. But I thought it was just kind of cool because even when he like gets out of the Jeep and they make a point to be like, oh, he gets the goggles. They still work the night vision goggles. He sees the Stegosaurus and stuff. And then when he finds Lex, that's the part that really I thought was really sad, because Lex is so fucked. Like,
yeah, she just went into shock.
Yeah, she's like full on like traumatized, and she starts calling them what is it called? Animal.
Yeah, like without the L.
And Tim makes like the comment like, oh, she hasn't said that since she was younger, and she is asking for where mommy and daddy are, and I was like, oh my god, that's so sad.
So sad.
The kid is probably like even when Grant and them are all like, he's checking her over, he's like, oh, like, you only have a cut. She's like, I told you I'm fine. And it's like, I'm pretty sure of the group of them, she is probably going to be like the most messed up for the rest of her life just from that whole thing. Because they made a point to like, he makes a point just to say that she's like hitting her head off of it. And like, she won't even respond to her baseball. That she's literally kind of been the annoying character in the background up till now. But now the whole book just focuses to her for that one scene, because you're like, oh man, like this kid is absolutely fucked from this, and they would be, right? And you think that she got eaten too, so we're like, holy shit, Lex is alive. So that's kind of, I don't know, it's crazy, because you think she gets eaten in the chapter before, because the T-Rex is like over with its head down, and Alan and Ian are like, is that Lex? Like, it sounds like she's screaming. And they're like, yeah, it sounds like Lex. And you don't really know. So, anyways, that's my rant about that so far.
That part was pretty... Like, when I was listening to this, I was doing something with my hands. I think I was, like, sewing Bennett's little tags in, and when I get to that part, I kind of, like, stopped what I was doing, because I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I wrote so sad down when I made my notes for Lex, and I never have thought that before, but I don't know, I just picture Bennett in like, that circumstances, and I was like, Jesus, that's so sad.
Well, it's so, like, exacerbated, because, like, the whole time, she's, like, so indifferent about everything else that's been happening on the island. Like, you know, like, they're looking at fucking dinosaurs, and she's just like, "You wanna play pickle?"
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, she's so not fazed by anything that they show them, and then, like, this is the first time that we've seen anything than her being, like, pretty annoying.
Yeah, it's like the beginning of us paying more attention to Lex, because you're like, oh man, she's really unresponsive. But the only thing that snaps her out of it is when she's asking where the adults are. And then she's finally like, oh, I'm gonna yell to Dr. Grant. And Tim's like, what fuck? Like, do not yell.
Oh my
There's
God.
dinosaur.
When she started yelling, I got so scared for her and him. I was like, what's gonna happen?
That's the kind of neat cutting, though, back and forth, because you Ed Regis, who's at the bottom of the hill, hears her.
The little bitch.
The little bitch that keeps going back and forth. And his was really weird, because it seemed like he was having, like, a crisis of what kind of human he was just for that 30 minutes that he's hiding.
Yeah, and I don't know, I think they set that up, like, it seems like a weird plot device to be like, "Oh, like, maybe he's not actually, like, a terrible person," and then when he chooses not to go see what's going on, like, when he chooses a turn to go towards the lodge, like, that's what seals his fate. I'm
Yeah.
having a really difficult time with the geography of this. Like, because I think the same thing, like, I'm imagining the the same geography from the movie where, like, they fall in some kind of pit, but they say that the T-Rex threw the car, like, 20 feet up in the tree, and that it just, like, doesn't seem like a thing that could have happened, you know, like,
I
I
know.
can't
I know.
suspend my disbelief for that.
I constantly am Googling, like, Google image, like, illustrations from books, and I find lots of, like, there's some really good art, but there's only, like, a handful of really good photos or drawings and paintings. And then you'll find the fan art where you're like, okay, so he throws it up, and they make a point later, Muldoon's like, oh, it's over there. Like, he does see the tree with the car crumpled at the bottom, and you're like, all right, how far is stuff apart? So there's a hill over here where he falls down, like, so we need to just make a diorama eventually of this entire thing.
And, like, for the Regis thing, like, in my mind, because like, Alan, like, right before Regis gets killed by the juvenile Rex, like, they think about going that way, Alan and the kids. And Alan says, "No, like, if there's a like," he says, like, "I remember that shape right before we were attacked," which we now know is the juvenile Rex.
Yeah.
And then he's like, if that was the juvenile Rex, we go down there, we're trapped. There's no place to go." So in my mind, like, Regis was right on the edge of that, and when he made the decision not to go help them, he walked into that death trap.
Yeah. Yeah, and he got the leeches and shit all over him and down the hill. I know they do set it up like that because it's almost like, okay, you deserve this, and we're gonna just stretch this out and describe how you're gonna get killed here.
The leeches are such like the leeches are such a weird, like it's horrifying, but it was such a weird, like, plot device. Like, it had nothing to do with dinosaurs. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just
I
don't.
know. I almost started to make a note of that to be like, okay, they've described like the plants that they've put together from other periods, like time periods in the dinosaurs, but like not once have we touched on like insects and other creatures.
I was thinking about this because I've been watching a lot of reptile like TikTok videos of these people who own reptiles. Super, trust me, it comes back.
Sure.
And they build these like self-sustaining enclosures, and one thing they put in there are these little tiny bugs that's supposed to like eat the poop of the animals and like kind of, you know, circle of life situation. And I'm wondering if these leeches are like that. I don't know about you guys, but I also envisioned like extra large leeches.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I
I
envision
mean,
extra large leeches.
me too. When he pulls it off, he says like his mouth like fills up with blood on one side.
I know.
But it's like, how do you not notice that on your
What's
face?
that? Like, there's like an old timey movie, like the Princess of the Nile or something like that. And there's like a scene where like the guy's like cutting weeds to get their boat through, and he climbs out, and he's got giant leeches on him, and that's what I always imagine.
Blech.
I feel like the trauma and fixation on making sure you're in a safe spot because this massive creature is like,
Yeah, because he literally pisses his pants.
yeah, so he doesn't give a fuck about the leeches because that's probably why he doesn't feel it, is because he's not thinking about what his surroundings are. All he's thinking about is getting to a place where that T-Rex can't get to him.
Yeah, well, he even says like he's about to go up and see, oh, I'm gonna clean myself off so they don't know I was hiding, and I'm gonna like come up here and get Lex. Then he's like, but she stopped saying stuff like, what if the dinosaur found her again? And he completely changes his mind again. And it's like, no matter what, his fear of that dinosaur is just completely ruining whatever goodness he has in him.
Well, I mean, not to sound,
You leave the kid?
unethical or anything, but it's not that I blame him for making that decision. It's just that when you're put in a high stress situation like that, where your life is literally in danger, I mean, people do things out of character. And I don't know anything about this character, but
well, he makes a point in his mind. Like, he's like, he always thought he was a stand-up guy until this, like, a brave or whatever person, right?
Yeah.
Then,
like, if there was a bear, I'd push you and run.
Wow.
Just kidding.
See? Bears. Told you. Don't like them.
You know what's wild is, like, I think that, like, honestly, I think the Bryce Dallas, yeah, you know what I'm talking about, the one from Jurassic World.
Yeah.
I think her character is actually based off the Ed Regis character from the first book.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, where did you
Because
hear
they're
that?
both. I just made that up right now.
This is the podcast.
Oh, okay.
I'm putting it out there for the world right now. But think about it, like, is I think they mentioned that Ed Regis is also like a ginger, but they're both like the publicists for Jurassic Park.
I always pictured as the guy driving the Jeep at the beginning of the movie with like the aviators on. I'm like, you're totally fucking Ed, aren't you? You gotta be Ed.
But I don't know, like, there's definitely a dynamic that we have, like Muldoon and Alan Grant. They're like nature man, and then we've got that's like flipping people off in the UK. Nature guys, and then we have like Ed Regis and Gennaro, who are like the anti-nature dudes. And so like we constantly see those guys conflict. I like that's a very vague way of being like this is a plot device. But think about it, like even Muldoon. I think Muldoon's like my favorite character in the book. Like sure he's gruff and stuff, but I think he's really likable.
He's the only one who doesn't seem afraid to go into the park either.
I don't know when he starts like spoilers when he starts driving around with a whiskey bottle between his legs.
Oh yeah, see, that's in the next part, isn't it? After this,
yeah.
And you also have to take into consideration like Alan Grant studied these dinosaurs and knows as much as a human possibly could know about them, and he also is a nature person. So even though he's in a high stress situation, chances are he's been in a high stress situation before, given, for example, his broken leg in the desert, and also knowing about the behaviors of these creatures and stuff like that. But with this publicist, like, he's a white collar desk job guy. Like, he's not a nature person at all. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure that probably adds to
the leeches got him.
Yeah.
Well, no, the dinosaur got him, but I don't know. From what I got out of this portion of like that we read, it seemed like there was a lot of examples this time around of like things being taken for granted almost, because like you really have Hammond like coming down hard on Mr. Arnold, being like, what the fuck, like get this shit up and running. And then you have like just weird things that are being taken for granted, like Ed Regis with the kids. Like the kids are fucked now because he left them. And little things too, like they kind of make a point, Michael Crichton makes a point to say like oh, we're supposed to use plastic buckles when we're like fastening stuff down your fences, but we use the metal one, and it's like you can't use that shit. It's an electric fence. So it's almost like everybody who is supposed to be taking care of the park is taking it for granted. Like Hammond's even taking the vet for granted when they're trying to tie the dinosaur down and like get it back in its paddock, because he's like, come on, like you're overdoing it. And he's like, man, we're not overdoing it. Like we do this all the time. You're like, you shouldn't be here. It's like Hammond hired these experts.
Stay in your lane.
Yeah, but even he's getting in their way, and it's like, dude, you're hiring the best people. They're trying to get your goddamn park back online. Also, I found it weird. It's weird hearing them like going back out immediately after this stuff happens and trying to wrangle animals back into their fences, and it's like somebody was just eaten. The kids are missing. Like the Grant's missing. You know, Ian Malcolm is probably gonna die. Like shit is fucked, and they're still like, we should probably go wrangle the dinosaurs, you know, and get them back in.
Yeah,
it's
why not
crazy?
Look for the people first. But I guess if you wrangle the dinosaurs in, you have a better chance of...
It's the whole thing of them trying to control the whole thing, right? Like, they cannot control it, but they will not give it up, because Hammond's like, get out there and get the dinosaurs back in. But it's like, dude, there's nobody at the wheel. Like, this thing is off the fucking tracks here.
Chaos.
Yeah, the chaos is the Malcolm effect is happening.
I was going to say that's in my notes, that this is the first time, too, we hear about the Malcolm effect.
Tell us about the Malcolm effect.
Well, it's just like his equation. Like, I can't remember how he said he drew it, but it's his equation that, like, he essentially did for the park that says eventually all their control is going to fail, and catastrophically.
Yeah, I think it's just something like, in his equation, it basically comes to a point where it always has a steep curve or something.
Mhm.
And he's like, you know, and Mr. Arnold, who in the book has a lot more say, like, because in the movie you're just like, oh, he's a programmer they hired to just do computer stuff. But in the book, he's like, I worked on missiles, and I worked on like...
Is that Samuel L. Jackson?
Yeah, and like he's like a really important character who's like really proud of the control that they have with the computer in the park. But yeah, even he's just like, we got this under control.
You know what I found really disturbing in a way, in a different way, is when John Hammond was describing how he wanted to control and why he chose that island, and his anti-government monologue that he had. Do you remember that?
Tell us about it.
I do.
Okay.
But go ahead.
You know, where he would talk about how if you go into pharmaceuticals, the government can control your innovation and your discovery, but if you go into entertainment, there's no regulation with that, so that's why he chose the entertainment route for making the dinosaurs. And how the reason why he chose this island is because, again, when he's on, you know, government land.
Well, this is a big theme. Like, they talk about this a lot at the beginning of the book, where like there's another company that early in the book called Biosyn, and they were like actually doing like they like created like an airborne version of rabies and tested it in like Colombia.
Okay.
So like that's like a big theme in this book, is like companies being reckless with new technology.
They don't even have the walkie-talkies charged. That's another point they make.
I know,
Muldoon's like, I got the walkie-talkies, but nobody fucking plugged them in, so they have to actually wait for like 20 or 30 minutes to even contact.
I think it's like a Titanic situation where...
Yeah, it is.
It's like an
that.
everyday on a film set situation.
They do a bare minimum to be like, we do all these things, but it's not ready for effect. When there's an...
It's a Malcolm effect.
The Titanic effect.
I think the familiar thing is like anybody that's like, I feel like anybody that's ever worked like in the field or any job where like there's somebody that's telling you how you should do the job based on never being there. Like, there's just like, theoretically this is the best way to do this, but then you get out there and you're like, this just isn't going to work.
Yeah,
like, you know, the weather's bad, or like there's some other variable that they have no idea is going to influence the product. And that, like, I think that's like the core of like this Malcolm effect thing. Like, they cannot like account for every single variable.
That's why you have to build a risk management plan.
Well, Wu even says when he looks into the DNA code, which was funny because they're 10 gigs, and it's like, oh shit, 10 gigs.
Dude.
I thought it was neat that they kind of were talking about how it's like an artistry of like how he just selected certain things to like fill the whole code back
with
in.
the amphibian.
Yeah, and he's like, oh
DNA.
fuck, Grant was right. But that's just, there's so many levels of them. Like in the movie when Malcolm's like, oh, it's like you're handling it like, or is it Ellie? I don't know. Somebody says that you're handling this like a kid who's found his, father's gun almost, where it's like, just really irresponsible. And there's so many levels of irresponsibility I found in this section that are just like over and over and over and over and over. It's just really, really crazy.
I loved the part when Wu went to.
Oh my god.
I'm really bad with names. What can I say?
Sure.
Went to the lab to go and check the DNA, and then he noticed that someone had punched the code in for the walk-in, like the freezer or whatever, the refrigerator, whatever.
It's like the spike in the heat graph.
Yeah, they're like, oh, someone was in here.
Yeah,
like,
that was cool.
Why was someone in here? And then he went back to the thing that he wanted to do, and he never really finished that thought process and figuring that out. But we, as the readers, now we're like, ooh.
Well, he said there was the heat signature of somebody opening up the...
Yeah, so he basically said someone must have come in here. Why did someone come in here at night?
That motherfucker knew.
Yeah.
I think that Hammond, when he's going off eating like his ice cream or whatever, and he's like, oh, Henry, like, I understand that Dodson thinks we're making dinosaurs as miniature pets and blah, blah. For a moment, I was like, do you think it's Wu who is double-crossing you here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing that we take for granted now, that we already know, like Jurassic Park's so ingrained in us, we just know how the whole heist happened.
Yeah.
So like we take for granted that that's like kind of a thrilling part of the plot.
Yeah, because I'm getting the impression that he thinks it's Wu. Hammond, it seems like he makes a point to say that he's not senile, but
yeah, he seems cooked.
Yeah, but when like Gennaro's like, just so you understand, sir, like your kids, the grandkids are missing, and he's like, it's made for kids, and I think we as the reader are like, what the fuck? What is he talking about? Like, he's lost his mind here.
Yeah.
He's kind of goes into full villain mode for me after that point.
Yeah, I find, okay, that was one thing I wanted to bring up was in the movie, I mean, it's been a while since I've seen the movie, but in the movie, I never saw him as the villain. I feel like he wasn't portrayed as a villain, but in the book, he is such a bad guy.
Yeah, he's like a bad guy.
Like, he is a bad
guy. I mean, I think he's riding the line, and you're like, he just wants to have a cool park. And then after that part where he's like, it's made for kids, it's like,
you know what?
That's awful.
At first, I was like, oh, he just wants to open up a cool park. But then his monologue about, I could be charging $5,000 a ticket. Like, I can blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, clearly it's not just about making a park to show people about dinosaurs. Like, you are still a greedy, money-hungry...
His Trump was
piece
showing.
Of shit. Yeah. I was like, his Musk.
His Musk was showing.
It's getting musky.
Yeah, he becomes full villain.
Do you think it's worse because we have like this picture of the movie Hammond, who, like, we have the exact opposite exchange where in the movie Gennaro says we can charge whatever we want for this, and Hammond's like, no, this park's for everybody.
Yeah, and then that's true.
To go to this role, like I think it does enhance it, like, skews our view a little bit more.
Yeah, it definitely shocked me because I didn't think that they changed that character a lot. I mean, I had no reason to not think that. I don't know. But I don't know, that just really surprised me, and it just gave me the ick. Well,
I think that for me, it's when he said, it was kind of weird too, because Gennaro and him were arguing pretty good. And then once he's like, just so you understand, sir, and I'm like, oh, he's calling him sir. And it's like, your grandkids are missing. And when he makes a point, again, to be like, he gets a chill because John Hammond's just eating ice cream. And he's like, the park's made for kids, though. And it's like, what? Are you fucking crazy? Like,
Yeah.
do you care about your grandkids? Like, they are probably dead. Like, if I were them at that point, I don't care who Alan Grant is. I'm like, you're in a park with a T-Rex loose? You're probably dead.
Do they know the T-Rex is loose at this point?
Like,
does he think all the animals are still in their enclosures?
No, in this section
not by
of
his
book,
monologue.
Yeah, okay. there's like a point where they're like, yeah, we can't get the T-Rex back in the pen. Like, there's no way we can do it because Hammond again is like not taking it seriously enough. And Muldoon is like, I needed 3 weapons and you let me have 1, and then now it's with Dennis Nedry, and Hammond's like, well, whose fault is that? And he's like, well, Nedry's your responsibility, not mine. Like that, you're supposed to be looking out for him. So Muldoon is kind of like getting pretty vexed at that point, I think. With throwing some Am with an E dialogue out here.
Karen says vexed.
I love Vex. We should bring Vex back.
Yeah.
Hashtag Vex back.
The Vex podcast.
Okay, have we gotten past the point that
No, I mean, there's so many, because it's back and forth a bunch of times. Like, you know, even if
I thought the monologue happened after. But there's a bunch of stuff here. So I'm trying to think, where am I?
I have all my notes in chronological order, so I'm just like jumping back and forth here.
I feel like we've definitely covered everything that I watched.
Well, we can get back to Ed Regis.
I thought the ice cream happened after Regis died, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, it does, but I think it's because we were just talking about Hammond that I jumped over to that. But we can go back to Regis because I honestly thought that death to me was like, I know that Nedry's death was super graphic and scary, but for me, I thought Ed Regis's was so much worse because
I don't remember him dying. I remember the dinosaur kept pushing him down, and he kept getting like frustrated with it.
Yeah, it's like playing with him.
Yeah, but I don't remember him actually dying.
Well, he just screams, and it's described like the T-Rex just ducks its head down, and then he comes back up, and all the pieces are in his mouth.
This is interesting because you're not seeing it from, like, with Nedry's death. Like, the thing that makes Nedry's death really like visceral is like he's like, I feel like my own guts, and there's like part of where you're like, I feel my guts, like,
yeah,
makes me like really uncomfortable. But like we're seeing Regis's death from Alan Grant's perspective. Like, and remember with Nedry's death, they talk about like the pressure on his head.
Yeah.
If we never have that with Regis because it's just like Grant describing in his own inner monologue of like, oh, he might get away. He's right on the edge of the forest, and that's when the juvenile Rex jumps on him.
Yeah.
And he says like the Rex like lifted its head and it had the ragged flesh hanging out of it. And they talk about like he went from yelling at the Rex to screaming at the Rex and then just nothing.
Yeah, it was just almost like he was gonna get away because he kept hitting the Rex's snout and stuff, and they kind of make it seem like it's not big enough to really care about killing him, but then it's just like he's dead like that, like just done. And
I imagine it as like you know the scene, like say the juvenile raptor, and I imagine the baby raptor from the second movie. And there's like that scene at the very end of the second movie where they're in the ship hull. And they're just like, oh yeah, let that guy die. And the little Rex, like, the parent knocks him over, and then the juvenile Rex.
Completely forgot about that part. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, that's really gross. Yeah,
Cora's about to gag.
Oh no, I had to cough.
I thought that was interesting though, just because they were like only like hours earlier at the T-Rex pen with the goat that came out, and they're watching it like as a spectacle, you know? And now hours later, Ed Regis is down there.
He's the spectacle.
He's the spectacle, and they're all watching from a distance, and Tim still has the night vision goggles on. So it's almost like
he probably saw it all.
He did, and they make a point because Tim like gets sick, and that's when his little goggles fall off, and you're like, oh, it's a metallic thud hits the ground, and the Rex snaps over. I watched an interview with Michael Crichton.
I didn't hear that part.
Yeah, and he makes a point to say, like, when he was writing the novel at this part, he was, like, trying to do all these, like, movements with his head, and his, like, wife walked in and was like, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, how would a dinosaur turn its head quickly, you know? Like, would it snap over like a bird? Or... So, anyways, I thought that was cool.
Yeah, because they don't... see things that are still. So if something moves, it's like a dog with a squirrel. It's like squirrel.
Well, they make a point earlier to say that the T-Rex is... Or isn't it like they think that they're being watched by other animals, so they're always on the lookout after they kill their prey?
Yeah. I don't know. There's like it's that whole thing's for some reason my brain. There's two things. I constantly forget how dark it is. Like I constantly forget that it's like nighttime and then like Tim's got the night vision goggles, even though that is like a plot device that like to get to the next level. Um, but also I always imagine like this juvenile Rex being more like a raptor.
Yeah, me too. Because they describe it as being like 8 feet tall. Oh,
I'm gonna mute it.
No, it's okay. Just cough.
Okay.
We lose 3 listeners. Yeah, because a T-Rex is like 8 feet tall in it, isn't it? Like that's
the juvenile is 8 feet tall, which is 2 feet taller than you.
But he moves fast.
Well, he might be 8 feet tall, but he's probably also really wide.
Side note: I have the juvenile Rex toy for Jurassic Park 1.
What?
Yeah, and I always wondered why they made the toy because it's not in the movie. But I have the juvenile Rex and the big T-Rex.
That's wild.
It's at the juvenile's at my Tro home, but
you mean the one that's around the corner?
Yeah, he has like the dino damage that you pull out and you can like see his ribs and shit.
That's cool.
But yeah, I got the Juvie Rex first, and I was always like, "That's weird. There's no juvenile Rex."
Juvie Rex sounds like.
So, anyways, Ed Regis is dead.
Well, that's my cue. I gotta go.
Cora, as the first guest on the dinosaur podcast, the Jurassic Park podcast, we're gonna start a thing where every guest has to do a dinosaur impression, and you get to be the first one. So you can pick any dinosaur you want.
From the commercial from the 90s.
You can do whatever impression you want.
You know, where the little kid goes,
Nope.
Oh, I do know. It was like everybody's got a skill.
Yeah!
Oh my god. My ears just exploded. And that's a wrap on Cora.
All right. Do you have a toy to unbox today?
Okay, so here's a real thing: is I have started to hoard in the Jurassic Park toys, but I don't know. I think they're in my car.
All right. Well, let me know when you're unboxing, and I might pop back in.
Can you see this?
Oh my god!
Yeah, you can see it.
It's begun.
All right. See ya.
We never saw Cora after that.
Do with these?
You can just leave them there. Yeah. So Ed Regis is dead.
The other thing is like that whole him getting sick and the goggles falling down is the beginning of a long line that literally builds up to Alan Grant being like, "Can't you just do what I tell you?" to the kids. You know what I mean? Like that's the first thing.
They've escaped death like multiple times at this point. It's crazy too, because like Tim's nose is broken. Like these kids are fucked. Like it's so much worse than in the movie. In the movie, they're like, "We're battered up, but we're ready to climb some trees." And they're like, Lex is like, Tim's nose is broken, and she's like, "I have PTSD," and Alan Grant's just like, "We're gonna get through this." But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's not that many other crazy deaths like the Juvie Rex. Do we see the Juvie Rex again after this? I can't remember.
Yes. We see it again when they're in the raft.
Oh.
Because there's that part where they get to the lagoon and remember the big Rex is asleep?
Yes. Yes, that's right.
And they start the big Rex starts chasing them, and the only thing that saves them is the Juvie Rex shows up to steal the Hadrosaur the big Rex killed.
Right. That's right.
And I don't know if we see it again after that.
I'm stoked to just get to the next part because I feel like every section that we're doing, I listen to it over and over. I listen to it once a day, like the entire section that we're doing, because that's how long I'm in the crib with Bennett for. So when we get to the next part, I'm really not remembering. Even though I've read it, I'm reading it again for the first time, piece by piece. It's very cool. But yeah, the weird thing I thought was that Malcolm was actually bit by the T-Rex, because he wasn't in the movie, was he? I thought he just gets knocked by the snout of the T-Rex.
I don't know because like his legs definitely jacked up. I don't know if we ever get an adequate answer whether his legs jacked up from getting some teeth, or if he's jacked up from like the impact of the shitter.
Yeah, yeah. And it's weird because in the movie I was always like, okay, the T-Rex must have meant to bite him, but he was out of range and just like hit him. But in the book they're like, oh, they just bite it because the strength is in their neck when they like shake you to death
Yeah.
and not just in their jaws. The jaws are just there to hold you. I was like, oh fuck. It's really gruesome, like the descriptions of how they kill you. It sounds awful. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot that's actually um based in like modern herpetology. So like that's what they talk about with like crocodiles and stuff. So they have a really strong bite force. They have like no chewing, right? It's like they grab and they roll and tear.
Yeah, it's so gross.
And everything in this, like every time somebody gets attacked, like they go into great detail about like the tearing and the cutting, right? So that's actually
Yeah,
like comes up because we do Regis dies, uh they they get going. So then kind of the next thing that happens is they contact the Jeep. They get them to come back with the Jeep because Nidri has the other Jeep. And then we
yeah,
get into Arnold talking about like this is actually where they mentioned the Malcolm effect the first time.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and they're like, listen, he he's not Arnold's like he's not coming back. I need to go start going through this code and figuring this out. And then we're like that's gonna build into later on. We get way more into like all this nerd stuff. But little ADHD segue. I looked up like how
Mhm.
much because we're also as a group listening to Contact and Contact or reading. I'm listening to it. Contact actually mentions the Cray supercomputers again, which is the same
Oh yeah, that's
supercomputers.
right. That's
And,
true.
and I like looked up to like how many Crays equals like an iPhone, and it was like I don't know. They said it's not a real statistic, but they're like it would take a room full of Crays to equal one iPhone these days.
That's wild.
I
It
was
is
like,
crazy.
but like even think about like in Jurassic Park, they're like, this is technology we need to monitor for like the military, and
I
now it's like our
know.
iPhone is way
When they're
better.
like, we're gonna up the number over 400 to see if we can find them, and it's like, Jesus Christ. They're like, they're probably sleeping though, so we won't find them till they wake up. It's like, if they ever remade this, they would have to keep it set in the time period. Otherwise, it wouldn't make any sense with all the computer tech.
Mhm,
It's almost like trying to like reboot a movie about Apollo today. Like you have to tell the story back then, or it's because it's unbelievable what they can accomplish with technology back then,
mhm.
as compared to now. One thing I thought was kind of cool was the keystroke thing that they talked about. Mr. Arnold or Sam Jackson's character using this is the keystroke to like backtrack and find out what Nedry did. Because I know they
Yeah.
mentioned it in the movie, but for some reason, reading it in the book made so much more sense to me.
Mhm.
And even like I don't know, a lot of the description that they use of going to try to find out what Nedry did in the computer, it made so much more sense because in the movie it was just like it just seemed like computer stuff, and Hammond or Sam Jackson's got like the cigarette and you're like, oh, he knows computer tech. But it seems like Michael Crichton is just so smart. He's really good at describing what they're doing. He was like studying to be a doctor and he dropped out to be an author. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Man.
I mean, like it's funny because like it's just funny because another thing I noticed is like they're talking about when Tim was under the car. He's like, I'm getting like he was getting covered in the oil. I'm like,
Oh
where's the
yeah.
oil coming from? It's an
I
electric
know. I
car.
wondered that too. I was like, wait, oil from what exactly? Like, what are we talking about here?
But then it's funny, like he gets into like this great depth about the digital nerdery, but then like it really is just a chuck off detail. But like still, I'm like, we're
I
so
know.
electric car savvy these days.
I know. It's really weird. Like, where is the oil coming from? Even when it flips over and the rain sparks everywhere, I'm like, so are there onboard batteries then? Like, I thought I was connected through the cable in the road to power it. I also thought there
Mhm.
was no power at this point. So I was like, what the fuck? What are we talking about here? But yeah, he goes into weird details about certain things sometimes. Like, even when, like, eventually, like, when the goggles fall off and it's kind of a cool transition between the chapters because he's just like Grant grabs their hands and they run, and then it cuts back to the control room, and you're like, holy fuck! I wonder if this juvenile Rex is following them. But when you get back to Tim and Lex and Grant, and Lex is asleep, and Tim's just like, yeah, like parents are getting divorced. It's like total 180 into like a different kind of topic, and he makes a point to be like, yeah, my dad doesn't carry Lex anymore, and like she misses him, I don't miss him, and Grant's like, uh-huh. And I thought it was also kind of cool where Tim just assumed that Ellie Sattler was like his girlfriend and they were gonna get married. So he could, even Tim, like through their kid lens that's so unfiltered, he can see like some I felt like anyways that he saw a chemistry happening, but Grant makes a point to say like, oh, you know, my wife died a long time ago and she's actually gonna marry this really nice guy in Chicago, and Tim's like surprised by it. So I was kind of like, I thought it was kind of cool that in the movie they already start off as a couple a little bit. I don't know, like it's such a weird, almost throwaway conversation because it doesn't really, you know, do anything to like further the plot, but it's almost like, you know, you finally get this like slowdown where you can actually find a little bit of backstory about them. So I don't know, I was glad they expanded that in the movie because, you know, Ellie and Grant don't get together eventually in the movie, spoilers, but it makes sense because they go through this horrible situation in Jurassic Park, and I'm sure that they, you know, it probably
Well, they
tore
also
them
make such a
apart.
point in the movie to say that he hates kids.
Yeah,
And she like in the third book, like they're like, yeah, well, I got a kid now, you know, like
yeah, yeah, that's true. There is parts of the third movie now that I'm older that I like a lot more, but when I was younger, I remember being like, man, what the fuck? Steven Spielberg didn't do this one. I was so disappointed. But now looking back, I like that they take those things and come full circle with them later on. It's just so much more believable. Um, I also just feel bad for the kids because they're so fucked. It's bad. Like, even when he's like, yeah, my new dad argues with my mom, and Grant's like, uh-huh, okay. Like, doesn't really know what to do. Because,
yeah, it's such a weird thing. It's like I wish I knew. I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but it seems like Crichton really wants to lean on this thing about like kids are more resilient than you think.
yeah,
But like it seems so out of context in a book about like genetic modification, you know. Like
yeah,
it
it's
makes you wonder
so
what was
random.
going on in his life.
Yeah, that's true. It does make you wonder, because, I don't know. I know in Spielberg's movies, he always kind of leans into like the relationships with the parents and the kids, and like the kids not getting enough attention from the parents, and that's why they're off on these crazy adventures because nobody's really watching them, you know. And then you have the grandfather who basically has sacrificed their lives to like open this park. So yeah, that's just a really weird part. And they're trying to like navigate themselves around the park with those beacons with like the compass writing on them,
Mhm.
and they're basically they're like very close to getting fried by the fence, right? Because after they do find the fence and climb it, like very shortly after that, they turn the fences back on.
Yeah, they didn't make that like seem to make it as much of like a plot point as was in the movie. Like that wasn't the
Yeah.
thrilling part. Like I think this is. I'm terrible because I can't. I'm not totally sure where we ended it, but like there's like the whole Hydrosaur like stampede, or yeah,
Oh,
it was
yeah,
technically
right, yeah.
Hadrosaurs. You know what I mean? And like that was very much, I think, more the like that riveting. Like it's funny they took something, the movie took something and made it less interesting because they had
Mhm.
the Gallimimus stampede,
Yeah,
but then like created the fence situation.
yeah. It's true. They kind of juggled. I would love to have seen that scene in the movie. That's fucking crazy when the T-Rex
No,
takes down. Yeah.
well, dude, it was graphic in the movie, but like if they would have written as like dinosaurs stepping on each other and shit like that, like
It's crazy that the T-Rex, they make a point to say like we can't bring it back. Muldoon's like, I'll deal with it in the morning, you know, like, and there's a T-Rex literally loose on the island and nobody
well,
can stop it.
it's not like Muldoon's like, yeah, like I'll deal with it when I get up. It's like he's like, I'm not fucking going out there. Like,
Yeah, like he knows they need sunlight and they need people, and that's another thing. I know we've touched on this before, but it's so weird because there's still staff working and like helping them put the dinosaurs. I think they say they have like at least 5 dinosaurs to put back in their paddocks, and it's like these people must be getting paid really well, I hope, because this is fucking crazy. Like someone's been eaten, people are missing, but they're still trying to get the dinosaurs back in their little pens. Like I don't know. It's fucking crazy. There's crazy shit going on. And Malcolm is totally I don't know. And in the movie, he's just kind of like doing his sexy Jeff Goldblum shirt open thing, and it's not as serious.
Well, like we haven't even we're dancing around like the graphic thing because like we're right at the section where Muldoon comes up to the Rex attack site, and
Yeah,
they find Regis's leg,
yeah,
and he like picks it up and blood runs all over him, and Gennaro's like, "Whoa, what?"
yeah,
And like Muldoon's just like unfazed.
yeah, and because he's got all that experience, on safaris and stuff, and
He might
it,
also be drunk.
that's true. Yeah, I love the line later near the end of this where he's like, "You've got a Rex loose," and it's like, it just sounds so funny because he's like, "Well, now you got a Rex in the park loose." So, but yeah, I thought it was really crazy that Ed Regis has just been reduced to this limb now, this bloody limb, and he's just carrying it around in the tarp. And Ellie's like, "Oh, what's that?" And he's like, "That's nothing."
That's an interesting point. Like, I don't know. Like, I guess you would take the leg, but later on in the book, when they find Nidri's corpse, spoilers, they like make a point that they don't take his body. They're like, that said, also like hauling out a Nidri-sized man and hauling out a single limb are two different things. Like,
I was wondering, do you think in Jurassic World would they have cleaned that shit up or just left it there? Like with the old park? Or would they would have to, right? Like they would
well,
have
they
to.
find the ruins of the original park that they drive the
Yeah.
Jeep out of. But then also, I thought there was somewhere, I thought in Dominion. Is Dominion the one where they have the Dino Refuge with like the Bill Gates slash Apple guy? You know what I'm talking about? Where
Must
they,
be.
I think it is Dominion. I think he has the Barbasol can on his shelf.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think the Barbasol can comes back up.
Shit, I gotta see this again. So somebody goes and gets it.
Yeah, well, I assume that like they came across it while they were working, and I think maybe he was affiliated with Biosyn in some way.
Interesting. Because
I
I
could be
mean,
totally wrong.
I
Leave your notes
love
in the comments.
seeing. Yeah, somebody do some research. I love seeing the old park in Jurassic World. That honestly made me love the movie because I just always wondered what it would be like to go back there. I wish we could see more of it, but it wouldn't make sense in context of the movie or whatever. But even just seeing the visitor center and like the old jeeps and like the banner and the night vision goggles and all the flares was so cool. But anyways,
Yeah, well, I think that you'll see, not to turn this into the Jesus, the new Jurassic, what's the new one?
Rebirth.
Rebirth. Like, I think you'll see them get into the tunnels. Like, that would
Oh,
be cool.
that would be cool. I hope we do see that. There's so many things they could still use from the novel. There's tons of unused stuff in there that they could do.
Well, and they said they have that whole sequence, right? That was like in the novel, but they couldn't use in any other movie.
Yeah, I'm stoked to see that. I feel like once we finish this book and then we move on to the movie and then we do the Lost World novel and then we do the Lost World movie, we'll probably just because there's no more novels after that. There's just video games and like tie-in properties and stuff, like comic books and things and but yeah, there won't be any novels after the Lost World. It's weird. So we'll probably speed through the other stuff and we'll probably get to Rebirth once we get past Dominion. I'm guessing.
Do you think maybe that's where, not to start shit, that's funny. We're on the Jurassic Park podcast, so I'm going to start talk about when the Jurassic Park franchise fell off the rails. But do you think like maybe like there is a little bit of like when we got away from the book that because like pretty much things from the first book happen in every movie right up to Fallen Kingdom, more or less.
Yeah,
Like I would
I
really have
think
to
you're
dig
right.
in Fallen Kingdom. Like everything
Yeah,
was familiar up until then.
the vibe changed, man. Like, even at the beginning of Dominion when they're on the island, it's still Jurassic. It feels like it, you know? But then when they're just in the mansion for the rest of the movie, it kind of switches gears, and then Dominion is like Dominion almost seems like it's a spoof of Jurassic Park. I don't know.
It's super weird because
Yeah.
they brought back all these people we should love, but they're kind of like they seem like kooky old people.
I know, it's pointless. They put them back together to, it's almost like in The Force Awakens when they steal the Millennium Falcon and they're in it for like 5 minutes and then suddenly Han Solo shows up and he's like, "This is my ship." And you're like, "What the fuck? Come on." That's kind of weird. And they're like, "Oh, we had a tracking beacon on it." So we knew. We knew when we got here within minutes to find it. And it felt like that in Dominion where Ellie and Grant and Ian Malcolm were back together, and they have the new characters and the old characters, and they're all running from the dinosaurs. And I don't know, it was weird. I couldn't get into it. I don't know. We're gonna destroy that movie when we review it, I think. Even Dominion, I think, is Fallen Kingdom compared to Dominion is like so much better. At least it has cloning and the island and.
Yeah, I mean the thing about Fallen Kingdom is they tried really hard to make it scary, like really scary, and like I think they kind of came up a little bit short in that, but like
Yeah.
maybe it's really scary to like kids.
I know. No, you're right though. They marketed it as like, "Oh, we got this guy and he does horror really well. This is going to be the Jurassic Park horror movie." But I think that this one coming out, Rebirth, is probably going to be one of the scariest ones. It's looking like.
And there's the whole like spoilers in fucking uh Fallen Kingdom, the whole cloning thing. It was her being like, "They're like me, let them loose," and then like they're like
Yeah.
like a dozen dinosaurs get loose and they populate the whole world. It was just like, what is happening?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. And they had the one button to be like, if you push this button, you're going to save all the dinos. Or we could not push the button. It's like.
Listen, Jurassic World, do better.
Honestly, I was surprised they still called it Jurassic World. I don't know why they just don't go back to Park.
Oh, yeah. There's no park left.
I guess it is the Jurassic World. I got us completely off topic.
No, you're good.
But
We just did Gennaro and Arnold, or sorry, Gennaro and Muldoon checking out the leg, and that's where they find the watch and everything.
yeah, the watch, which was cool. That was another thing where Gennaro's just kind of taken Muldoon's experience for granted. He's like, "Oh, Muldoon is there's no way. Like he's way too excited about this. He's a weirdo." And then Muldoon's like, "Oh, look, there's tracks." And it's like, yeah, that's why he's hired here. Like,
Yeah.
And there's just another example of people being taken for granted. And that's why things get screwed up in the park. There's so many things getting taken for granted here that.
Well, I think there's like a level two that we're trying to build up Muldoon as this character that knows what he's talking about. And like, we've seen like we know that he's obviously experienced in his field and there's a level of confidence, but this section really drives home like this guy knows what he's doing. And if he's scared, like we should be scared too.
Yeah. Yeah. It was creepy. They do a
And
good
he
job.
was that guy in the movie too, right? Because he was the one that's like the Raptors, like we should kill them all. Like
Yeah.
he's like he was the guy. Like everybody else in the movie was kind of Raptor neutral. He's the one like these things are gonna eat our faces.
Yeah, it's cool that in the book they're like, yeah, you wanted the electric collars and we got them and they bit them off. It's like, man, I want to see this shit, Although they kind of have them in Jurassic World. But yeah, that's creepy when he's like, "Oh, I don't expect to find the kids because they always are eaten completely." It's like gruesome. But yeah, then they find Ian. Ian's all fucked up, and they take him back. He's all fucked. He's basically on death's door for the rest of the book.
Well, he says like he's like because he's got a broken leg, but he's got like a compound fracture, which maybe that's what happened in the movie where like so he didn't get bit, but he got thrown and broke his leg. And when he broke his leg, like that's when the bone leaves the skin.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's talking about like it being like starting to smell bad, which is usually like a really bad sign.
Yeah, it's the Malcolm effect right there, happening with the leg. Gonna.
But there's also like one point where he's like talking to Arnold on the phone. That was another thing, like back a little bit when they're figuring out Nidri messing everything up. That like he's like they're like listen to the phone, like the phones are still like dialed up, which is a thing kids don't know about these days. But he's like, I went down to the basement and turned off the modems. Like this is not like he's jamming the phone somehow. It wasn't like he just like jammed them by using up all the bandwidth. He actually like did something.
Oh, I didn't even realize that yet. Shit. Did they say that? Fuck. I missed
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Because they're like, maybe I'm farther ahead in the book, but like they're like Arnold's like listen to the phone. And they're like it's hissing. It sounds like a modem. He's like it's not. I went down to the basement and unplugged all of them.
Oh, shit.
And I think that's when he realized that like I need to get into the like into the code and figure out what's actually going on.
Oh, yeah, and Woo's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm looking through all of it.
Yeah,
Fucking crazy.
all
Yeah,
10 gigabytes of
all 10 gigs.
it.
I thought that, it was kind of a relief when you finally have, like, Grant and the kids get through the gate and they just fall asleep immediately. Like, the first opportunity, they're safe. And I think you as the reader are just, like, kind of need a break, too, because it's been so many intense chapters in a row.
Mhm.
It's just wild that they're still out there trying to set the park back up and get things back together. And then they're just asleep in this little shed with the hay. And they don't even really know where they are or where the Tyrannosaurus is. But they think they might. Don't they make a point to be like, oh yeah, we're outside of the Tyrannosaurus's pen, but they don't know that it's on the loose outside of his pen at that point, do they? Like
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Grant.
I don't think they realize that the T Rex is back until they're like at the Hadrosaur.
Yeah, that's right. That'll probably be in the
Uh,
next chunk we do.
yeah, yeah.
Because I
But is this? There's like a does a Triceratops like put its head through like the shack they're sleeping in?
Yeah, that's pretty much where I went up to because when they wake up at dawn, I thought that would be the fun part to start the next
Yeah.
humongous chunk because it's almost like they go through so much trauma. it's it's actually crazy. Once you're done reading, you're like, man, they really went through it here. Like it's incredible. Because in the book they sleep in the tree and the brachiosaur comes up and it's funny because that Grant's like, oh, we can't sleep in the tree because the kids could fall out. But then in the movie they do. That's a huge tree in the movie.
Dude, it looks so bad in the new versions.
Oh,
Like where
really?
they remastered it. Like I went to see the remastered 3D version, and I'm like watching the movie. I'm like, wow, that tree looks like shit. Like you could tell it was like painted well enough for camera, but now
That's
it's way
hilarious.
better.
Yeah, those 4K restorations will get you, you know? I always thought the Brachiosaur CG looked really weird in that scene when it backs up and sneezes because it's like
Mhm.
purple suddenly. And all the other effects are just so good and hold up so well. It's a thing, man. Even when I was sending you guys pictures of like the T-Rex getting out of the pen and stuff today, I was like, it looks so good still. Like it looks so good.
I'm not convinced that isn't practical.
Like when he bites through the fence.
But like that still you said, I think that might actually be the practical dinosaur.
Oh,
And then
probably. I just mean like the CG parts. They still look
oh,
so
I see
good
what you're
with the
saying.
T-Rex. Even when he like steps on like the hood of the car when he goes after Ian and the other car like moves. It's just crazy they could do that kind of CGI back then. Like they can't even make
93
shit
to
look that good.
96, man, was like the primo world of CG.
They don't look good in the new Jurassic movies. They look like I don't know. I don't understand why it doesn't look better after so many years. It's weird.
Did you ever see like behind the scenes thing? Like, where in Jurassic Park 2, like the Lost World, when like he's trying to save the bus from going over, the guy's name, I think it's Nick, trying to save the bus from going over and the parent wrecks show up and they like tear the roof off the car, but then they grab him by the leg as he's
Yeah.
kicking and lift him out of the car. They actually did that. Like they had an animatronic that lifted him out of the car by his leg.
Oh my. Could you imagine being that stunt guy, being like, yeah, I'm gonna get killed by a T-Rex today?
Dude, I will pay you. You know what I mean?
I think it would be terrifying because they would just be like, on the day, it's like you have the rain and the movie lighting, and it probably would be fucking terrifying, I bet, but it looks really cool.
Well,
Because
they
doesn't
talk.
the what's that?
Oh, go ahead.
I got
You go.
nothing.
Well, they talk a lot about like the original animatronic for Jurassic, like the first Jurassic Park movie, like malfunctioning because of the rain.
I know it's like jittering and stuff. I looked up where are the original Jurassic Park animatronics, and the only ones that I could find were like the raptors. Because I
And
think
the
they're
Triceratops exists in somebody's like barn.
really.
Like I've seen video of like people visiting. Maybe it's like George Lucas's ranch or something, but somebody visiting like a ranch, and yeah, like it's like laid out in a stall.
What the hell? That's crazy. I would love to just see the old stuff. Like the T-Rex, there must be pieces of it somewhere, right? Like somebody has that,
Yeah,
don't they?
I mean probably just pieces because it'd be so big you'd have to take it apart, right? Like
Yeah,
I
that
bet you
thing's massive.
you'd have the best luck finding like the buck and the doe from the second one because
Yeah.
that's when they would have been like, okay, like these are people are gonna want to see these.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, even when they're sculpting the T-Rex at the Stan Winston studio before they like take the molds of it, I wonder where those things went. I couldn't find anything. But like there's things like I know for a fact that when they did Aliens with the Queen Alien, they took the headpiece and they actually still use that in Alien Resurrection and then in Alien versus Predator, I think. So it's
That's
still the
wild.
same. Yeah, like they still are using the same headpiece. It's really weird. And they even restored it again in a museum, I think not that long ago, but
Mm.
it's like with the latex and the foam latex would I read it just like deteriorates so quickly.
Dries out, yeah.
Like the OG Ninja Turtle costumes are really in rough shape, I think, from the Jim Henson studio.
Mhm.
Um They just look so good. Like it's so seamless. Even like in the kitchen scene, and I mean we're way off topic, but in the movie, like when they're in the kitchen with the Velociraptors, some of those parts, man, it just goes back and forth between animatronic and live action so well. It's unbelievable. And they're in
When we
that
do the
kitchen, you
when we do the movie, we need to do like a kill count for raptors. 'Cause,
know.
like for some reason, the book's crazy. Like later on, it makes it sound like there's fucking raptors everywhere. Like, there's like a bajillion
Yeah,
raptors on this island.
yeah, yes. At the end, like underground, we should try to like see like do an estimate. But yeah, there's like a lot because they say there's at least two raptor nests, right?
Yeah, well, they count the raptor. Like they're literally counting the raptors in the that underground nest. But then there's like I'm sure they said how many raptors are in the cage
Yeah,
that they
I think
have control of.
there's like a handful of them. I think in the cage, right?
In the movie, I think it's 8, or there were 8, and then the one alpha female killed all but 2 of the other. He has a line where it's like, "We had 8, but then she killed all but 3 of the others," or something.
I remembered.
Yeah, but, like, the reason it gets in my mind, it captured my imagination because there's the one in the tunnel that killed Arnold, and
Yeah,
Ellie traps there. There's one in the that gets trapped in the freezer,
yeah.
and then there's a bunch of raptors when they're, like, climbing around in the ceiling. So we need to
That
start a
part's
raptor count, is
crazy.
what I'm saying.
How did the T Rex get in there?
Dude, listen, it's if that there's I mean, I'm sure there's a loading door.
Because the Indominus Rex is in there in World, so it must. Yeah, there must be a back way in there with the vehicles or something. It was incomplete, so you know who knows. But that's pretty much where we leave off with the book. I mean, we're just waiting for dawn, right, for them to wake up.
Yeah.
So I think for the next part, we'll just do a real big chunk because
Yeah. Well, it's weird because it's like one of the few things that's kind of iconic Jurassic Park that's not from the movie is the ride,
yes,
which
that's
is like
right.
the river ride, right?
Who knows how long that's going to be in operation for, man? I don't think it's going to be much longer.
Dude, I was so bummed when we went to Japan and like they had the flying dinosaur, but the water ride wasn't open.
I've been to the one in Florida. That's about it. and they have
Are there like human characters on that ride?
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's people dressed up in like the Jurassic Park, and they had the whole visitor center there and everything.
No, but like when you do the river ride, are there like animatronics or anything? Like
Oh
when I did
yeah.
the Harry Potter ride in Japan, like Daniel Radcliffe like shows up on a broom, but he's speaking Japanese.
Weird. Is
It
it
was
the
super weird.
hologram thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the way I saw that on the ride, that ride was actually pretty wicked.
That's the only ride that like made me a little bit motion sick.
Yeah, it felt like you were actually traveling at a very high speed on it at certain points. They did a good job. Like I was actually really impressed with Universal. Even at the Jurassic Park one, even though they're like old animatronics, it was so cool because a dinosaur would pop out of the water next to your raft, and you're like, "Holy shit!" Like,
Mhm.
actually, the T-Rex scared the shit out of me at the end. Like, I knew
Mhm.
it was coming, but it was so big, and
Mhm.
your raft is headed right into its head, and then it just drops down. Um, I think we went on it twice, but yeah, I loved that ride because it felt like you were really in Jurassic Park. Like, it was so cool.
We
Even
did
when we went there, they had all like the dinosaur things on the walls, like in the parking lot. So it felt like you were going to park in Jurassic Park. It was so cool.
the Jaws ride in Osaka. And like
Ah,
it was like hilarious because like it's just like a Japanese level of melodrama. So like you know how like they do like the like, oh, there's a shark coming.
yeah.
But like imagine like Sully doing it, you know, like
I feel like it would be frantic.
it
Um,
was incredible.
I would love to. I wish I could have been at Universal when they had like Back to the Future and all that stuff, but it was all gone when I was there. I was so sad. They had the DeLorean there still, but like not the ride.
They're opening an Attack on Titan ride when we were at.
That's crazy.
And like but in Japan, right? So like it was like bonkers.
Yeah, I bet you that would be pretty terrifying.
We didn't that was one like we didn't even try because it was so new. Like
Yeah,
the flying dinosaur, we waited like probably like a half hour to an hour to get on that, and that was the only thing that we really queued up for.
it's crazy how long it takes to go on the ride. When we were at Universal, they had like I forget what the guy's name. He's on the motorcycle that flies in the movies in Harry Potter.
Egret,
And yeah,
Egret.
and that ride was an hour and 45 minutes. And we were like, what? But then you see it go by and they're all on motorcycles and you're like, oh, all right, that looks pretty cool actually. So fast pass is the way to go.
I
Um,
just get like a weird like thing about roller coasters where like I just tense up, and I like to think it's because like I'm like watching enough things about G-force. I'm just like tensing up so I don't pass out or whatever. But
yeah,
like yeah, like especially the first ride, I'm just like
yeah, I don't know if I can go on those anymore. Cora got me to go on the first one. I was like, wow. I actually was when we were going up and it stopped at the top. I thought I was gonna have like a full on like meltdown because you're locked in and you can barely breathe and you're like, oh my god, am I too old for this? Like, is this gonna fuck me up like my ribs and everything? Because it's a lot of force once you hit the bottom. And
it's like
also, I'm scared.
they had like a new one here a couple years ago that I went to do twice, and it was like the Klondike or whatever. And the first time I was like that full on tension, but I noticed where the camera was. Like I saw the flash of the camera. So the next time we did it, when we came down, I actually got a finger guns off at the camera.
Oh my god, that's awesome. Mine, I just look horrified with my eyes shut. I was like, the mummy one was cool because there was real fire. It was like, oh my god, are we gonna burn? Like this is not good. Um, Now we're way off topic, but that's what I like about Jurassic Park though, is it's an amusement park, and that's I think what I like about World too is I like the idea of us seeing the dinosaurs in the park while it's running. Like it's so interesting because I wish it was real. Like everybody wishes it was real. But it'll probably never happen because ethically it's a terrible thing to do. But somebody will
Well,
probably do it, I guess.
I mean, like we've talked about before, like Pleistocene Park, where like they're trying to find environmental reasons to like reintroduce like large ungulates onto the tundra, which is like mammoths, and you know that's where we talk about like giant sloths and stuff like that.
Just imagine seeing a dinosaur though. Like that would be so weird. Like I don't even know. To me, it would be like when I went to the Grand Canyon, like my brain wasn't computing the scale of the Grand Canyon. It was so big that it just looked not real to me. Because the atmospheric distortion is making it look like an effect in a movie. I don't know.
I think there's like things like that exist for everybody. Like if I saw an alligator, I'm not even like alligator's my favorite animal. But if I'm somewhere and I saw an alligator, I'm like, holy shit, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, that would be fucking terrifying. We went to an alligator park in Florida. It was very scary.
it's
Cora held
incredible.
one. She held one. We were feeding them hot dogs. It was like, they're gonna eat our fingers after this. This is not good.
That's wild. You're just feeding them hot dogs.
Yeah, like hot dogs right out of your hands. And they're like, I was like, I do not want to be here. This is not what I wanted. I wanted to watch spaceships like take off. This is insane.
Talk about a
But
jarring experience for you because you didn't even know that trip was happening.
yeah, Cora just plucked me out of work and was like, I booked your work off. I got us tickets. We're gonna go to the Jurassic Park ride. You're gonna see the DeLorean and we're gonna see like a SpaceX launch. I was like, I don't even know. Like, my brain almost didn't process all of it at once because it was so many cool things to do. Even the rocket launch, it was totally fluke. Like, because those are scrubbed constantly. But we saw the most powerful rocket in the world at that time take off and then land back on the launch pads in front of us. And then the
That's wild.
next morning, we saw the rockets on the launch pad driving past them on the tour. And I was like, man, like it's so weird reading about this stuff every day and then seeing it in real life because you see the rivets in it and you're like, that was in space yesterday. I saw that come back from space. Like, I don't know.
Do
Maybe
you
the
think you'd
world.
ever get like if you like say you worked on Jurassic Park? Do you think the dinosaurs would ever get old?
I think that didn't they say they have Excel? Oh, you mean like you get used to them kind of thing?
Yeah, like you just become jaded. You're like, oh, this dinosaur took a shit again. Like, great. Like
It's funny you say that because I was thinking about that vet character. What's his name?
Harding.
Yeah, and he's like, they kind of talk about how they don't really know how to measure what dosage to put them out, and they're like, if it's too much, we're gonna kill it. If it's too little, it's gonna wake up and like fuck itself up. And he's like, oh, I guess the dose right this time. And it's like, man, once again, you guys aren't really appreciating the fact that you have dinosaurs here. Like nobody really knows what they're doing at this place, and he's just like, I think they say he's like a bird expert in like the world, and he's like, oh, I couldn't pass up this opportunity, and it's like, man, you're just shooting dinosaurs with like fucking tranks and not knowing how much you're giving them. It's so weird to reread again, and you're like, it's like, yeah, they're so used to them that they're like, it'll be fine. Like, just don't worry about it. It's a dinosaur. It's loose in the park. So I think it's one of the reasons that they do take it for granted. Even in the movie, Ellie says, like, I think she says a line that's somewhere around the realm of, like, we never respected that power, and, like, now it's out now, and it's like, you know, it's a weird takeaway from Jurassic Park because there's so many lessons to be learned about, ethics of, like, science and nature. And I know that everybody says that and you can see it in the movie too, but with the book it really hammers home, like, people wielding things irresponsibly, like a lot of different things. And I don't know, it makes you wonder, are we rushing into the future too quickly? Like Carl Sagan with this Contact stuff, I'm gonna rant right now, but like Carl Sagan, even with Contact, there was a cool interview where he's talking about, you know with all the science and technology we have, like it's gonna be our downfall now that we have discovered it, because we eventually basically are gonna fuck ourselves with it. Or is it a reason to go out into space right now? It's either like we stay here and we get too comfortable with all of the stuff, like these crazy things that we have access to now, and basically kill ourselves with it, or we get our shit together, actually respect the fact that we have these things at our disposal and use them to actually like evolve for real and like further ourselves. That's kind of where we're at with everything right now. Really epic rant there.
Well, no, it's kind of like the did we just discover fire or did we just open Pandora's box? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, it is like that.
And we have like, I think there's a level of like, we have a degree of choice in that. Like,
yeah.
And I think right now, not to harp on American politics, but I think maybe a little bit south of the Canadian border, we might have opened Pandora's box a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
It's true
uh,
though. They're they're really taking shit for granted right now, and it's like, oof, it's kind of scary to watch unfold because we're reading this book about where they're doing this shit, and now it's kind of like really happening every day in like the major news. So yeah, I don't know what to
and I
expect
think
there.
it's hard for people like you and I to think that we can have any influence on that. But like,
Yeah,
I think part of it is like just like having a level of education. And I'm not talking about like Ivy League or scholastic education, but like really the thing we have at our tips now is we have never been able to search things so
yeah,
easily. It has never been easier to look up to see, okay, what's bad about genetic modification? Like what has gone wrong? What are we expecting to go wrong? How is this going to help us? Like these are the things that we can like look up pretty quickly. Like literally while you're pooping, just instead of playing, I don't know what people play
Candy
anymore. I don't know.
Crush.
I was gonna be like Flappy Bird, like
Oh, you know, Flappy Bird.
but instead of playing games on your phone, like you can read a couple like Wikipedia articles even, and like if 50,000 people all say, well, what am I gonna do? Well, that's a like pretty large voting like
I
population.
know. It's very sad. And you're right, it's all at our fingertips. Even if, people were to argue, oh, there's fake news and like there's misinformation being spread. It's like, well, then cite your sources. Just look at the source. We all learned about this in school. Like you just go to your little bibliography, cite your sources, do your research and just combine it all and then you'll find the truth in there.
Well, it's never been a better time because like it's like, okay, well now I have to do the research to see if this is real or not. Like I
Yeah.
saw an article today that there was like a hurricane heading for the States. And I was like, that's weird. It's not hurricane season. And it's like, and like, okay, I wish I should have took a screen capture of it. But it's like hurricane heading towards the United States is now totally unsurvivable. It's like, what the fuck does that mean? Like,
Dude, even the asteroid that they're like upgraded to like I think it's like 3% or something now. And now they're like, you know, what are we gonna do? 10 years, asteroid, and it's like, holy shit, 3%. I mean, I'm not saying don't, not worry about it. Everybody should worry about things like that, and they should make a big deal about it so they get more money, like to like, fund those redirect programs. But like people really sensationalize the weirdest things in the news lately. And even like I think it's like almost 40% or something of Americans don't even think that their own country landed on the moon. But even if there's like a little detail about a mission or a technical thing, you could just deep dive into it,
Mhm.
check the patents, check everything. All the information is there if you actually want to do the research. Um, and it's the same as the stuff in the book, in Jurassic Park. And this book is like old now too, which is crazy. Because they make a point to be like, there's going to be cowboy scientists who stop using like the code of conduct to like share information, and I think we're at that point now for sure. We don't even know what other countries are making, in labs and other places. Who
Well,
knows?
especially like with genetic stuff, like genetic science is so accessible now.
Mm.
It's funny, like at one point when we were talking to John, John's like, do we think somebody tinkering in their backyards could develop faster than light travel? And I was like, not a chance. But do I think that somebody in their backyard could develop some kind of weird genetic modification? Like maybe not dinosaurs, but I think they could probably make something that looks pretty weird. Like because you have
There's
all
like
this agricultural like genetic modification technology, right? That's accessible.
Yeah, I think that if you do a deep enough research into something, you can make it. Like, there's some 12-year-old kid who made like a mini nuclear reactor in his room, and he did it
Is that
with
a real
part.
thing? Did that
Yes,
really happen?
he has a YouTube a video I saw. He was making it for like a science fair, and he actually built it. And like the authorities came to his house and were like, you can't do this. Like, this is really fucking dangerous. I'll send you
The
the
thing
article.
about the thing about that and like this is like straight out of this book, is that like all that stuff is like the materials are so heavily regulated.
Yeah.
Like, and they start like when they're talking about moving the credit computers around, like they're like, no, we track these things for national defense. But like it doesn't seem to be, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm talking totally out of my ass, but like people still don't really seem to take genetic manipulation as seriously.
I don't know. I honestly haven't done a lot of research into that because it's the same as when you like see a headline, where it's like, oh, this person has a moon rock in their closet. Like, how the fuck did they get that? Because their Apollo moon, like these are things from the Apollo missions that were brought back, cataloged, distributed throughout like X amount of countries and tracked. But it's almost like at a certain point, people stop really giving a shit about these things and things get lost. And I'm sure the same thing could happen with like, DNA manipulation devices or any kind of materials you would need to actually pull it off. I feel like there's so much stuff that's not accounted for that's in rotation. And if you just look in the right places or in the right place at the right time, you could come across things. I don't know. It's
I
kind
think
of
it's all like
scary.
pretty domestic. Like I think like CRISPR, which is like like engineering, like genes, like editing. Like I think that's just like commercially available software. Like I could
Crazy.
be wrong, but like that's the thing is all this stuff is so heavily ingrained in agriculture now that like the idea that somebody might be able to genetic like modify something and it just like wipes out like a whole species of crop is like not totally like
Yeah, you're right.
out
I
of the
think we're
realm of like
no, you're on the money, man. I think we're on like the cusp of something like that happening. I'm surprised it hasn't happened, to be quite frank.
well
Like,
not to like stir the pot, but like there's some people that aren't me that believe that's what happened with COVID.
I know trust me, I know exactly what you're talking about. There's some things that I think that are going to happen really soon too, that are similar to those circumstances that are really going to divide people because nobody knows what to believe or who's responsible anymore. Like, it's so easy now to manipulate what people think, even if you have the truth staring you in the face and you've seen it. It's really a weird time. I would love to know what Carl Sagan thinks of all this, everything that's happened in the past couple of years. It would just be wild. I wish we could just hear his opinion because he's one of the only like people, like scientists that I'm like, I don't know. Like I just really truly like believe that he is our best interest in mind, no matter what. And hearing what someone like him would have to say about all this would be so fascinating. Because it's so mixed up now. Like it is mixed up.
Dude,
Um,
it's crazy town out there.
I know. I'm kind of freaked out. What am I gonna do? Bennett's gonna grow up in a crazy world where they're gonna make Jurassic Park, probably.
Yeah, maybe he'll own it.
Yeah, he'll be like,
You guys find oil underneath your house?
yeah. Well, just radon gas over here.
Oh god.
I know,
Being
right?
radioactive. Do you guys have like a radon detector or anything?
No, but we got an actual map when we bought our house of like the entire area that they gave us, and it was in the whole thing for buying our house, where it was like they did do a radon like check. And there's areas up by like the agricultural college that have higher radon in the ground. It's crazy, and
Dude,
nobody
we're
really knows about it. It's weird.
we're messing this up. We need to go to that agricultural college and be like, tell
It's
us
on my
about making
street.
dinosaurs. Like
It's on my street. It would be pretty wild if we were like, we're doing a podcast about Jurassic Park. What we talk to you about DNA and cloning and gene splicing. Like, what are you doing to your crops here? They would be like, uh, we have cows.
yeah. So you got any weird critters?
It is crazy in there. I remember when I visited there when I was a kid. They have like a pregnant cat, and you can literally play with it. It's open. It's dead, obviously, and you can pull all the kittens out and like handle them. It's fucking weird. Like, and there's
Yeah.
cows with holes in them. You can like reach into them, and there's plastic. It's so weird. Just
This
down
is
the street.
a weird thing, but like we used to do trivia there, like trivia provincials were there every year.
We were saying, yeah.
And one of the classrooms we used to do, like, they would always do trivia in, was, like, the meat cutting room. So it was
Whoa.
like a classroom, like theater, but then there was, like, a rack with hooks hanging from it that would, like, run around the room and across the hallway into a freezer.
Oh my god. I mean, there's no rooms like that. Cora's back. She's going to sleep. What time is it?
It's like 11. I'm giving you a minute and I need you to turn on the dishwasher when you go to sleep.
Okay.
There's no pot in it, so put the pot in.
Put the pod in. Put the Tide Pods. Kids are eating Tide Pods in our day
Pod!
and
I
age.
thought you guys were talking about pod. I was like, "Oh, you're gonna get us kicked off of YouTube now for drugs."
Oh no. That's a thing of the past. Trust me. I don't even know where you know, yeah. I will feed the cats, don't worry. Well, I'm probably gonna have to go soon because Ben, I'm on baby duty. I could be gone at any time now.
It's good, bruv. You know what? It's a good place to wrap it up. We covered all the important stuff, talked about a whole lot of other stuff.
Yeah, hey, at least we
You know,
timestamped it, you know?
listen, everybody, what more could you want? You know what I want? I want you to subscribe. Half of you aren't subscribing. Just push the button, bud. It's easy.
Push the damn button.
I don't even know why I say this because you've already obviously watched the show, but you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.
We're
In case
hanging
you
in
you
there.
have one of the other two things. But like and subscribe and check out our other shows. We don't just do Jurassic Park content.
It's true. You can see our beautiful little faces here on YouTube, which is funny, I think.
And stay tuned for the contact. That's like the
Yes.
first you're hearing it here first, folks. We're doing a podcast on contact.
That's gonna be good.
Well,
I think it might be more than one episode because there's a lot to cover.
well, I was gonna say, are we gonna do like an episode on the book and then an episode on the pod, like the same format here?
Yeah, I think probably the same. I don't think we can go as in depth because I think there is some parts of Contact where it's so sciency that I'm like it's beyond me, like my comprehension. And I'm like I have tons of space, like everything here. I have tons of books. I have a bunch of Carl Sagan books too, but even I'm just like, we could just spend one episode talking about how to build a spectrometer and how fascinating that is. I'd love to do that actually, but anyways, I'm sidelining the ending here, but it'll be good.
Thanks for tuning in, folks. We'll see you next time.